What's up, homies? Welcome back to another review from Heroes Reforged. We are here to do a review of Thor Love and Thunder from Mr. Taika Waititi. But before we get into the review, I want to let you know we're going to do a non-spoiler discussion first. So if you don't want to know any of the details of the movie, you're fine. When we transition to spoilers, we will definitely give you a heads up. That way you know it is your time to go. And I think it's definitely worth, like with any movie, to avoid spoilers before you go see it. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one. This is like, is this the 30th Marvel movie yet? Have they hit 30?
Adam, it is the 29th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
So Wakanda Forever will be 30.
Wow.
Might as well be 30.
Wow.
You can watch the beard, you can watch the gray in my beard grow as you watch us through the years.
Make that gray hair grow!
It wasn't there before, it's there now.
Oh boy. But you know who doesn't have gray hair? It's Thor, that son of a bitch.
That son of a
Chris
gun.
Hemsworth,
Very handsome.
that man is like just carved out of stone. That's ridiculous.
I mean,
that dude in some scenes, his arms were as big as some of the actors, and I was like, what are you doing, dude?
Well, are we gonna go in? Are we starting now?
General thoughts.
I mean, everybody knows because it was in the trailer that he is naked in a particular scene. In that scene, he flexes a lot. He makes his veins pop. Like it's just he flexes and lets
Thick
you
and
know
thunder.
that. Like, he's saying that when I get older, I want to look back at this movie to see how good I used to look, basically, because he is just chiseled.
Yeah.
Chiseled.
I mean,
chiseled.
he's going to be one of these actors that like look at Arnold now, like with the age that Arnold Schwarzenegger is, but he's still like in a pretty great shape for his age. Or Sylvester Stallone sometimes is pretty ridiculous with some of the pictures he's posting. Or you know, I think that Hemsworth is, along with being a really great actor, very funny guy, and just kind of this seemingly really nice and lovable behind the scenes guy and dad and husband and everything.
Yeah.
I think that he's also just as much of an expert in fitness and health as he is being an expert in acting.
Chris Hemsworth can hit the range. Now, I'm not saying it's Oscar level like acting or whatever, but there are moments in this movie that are very, very touching. And he hits those moments just as well as he hits the really, really good comedy moments throughout the movie as well. And so he deserves to be Thor. He is officially what Wolverine, or what Hugh Jackman was to Wolverine, Chris Hemsworth is to Thor. Officially now, officially, because there's
nobody
so much that happens here.
Yeah, nobody else could have done it. I love this film.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my favorite of the Thor films. I still love Ragnarok very, very much, but it's going to be, I mean, Ragnarok and Love and Thunder are going to be the movies I'm rewatching a lot more than probably most MCU movies, because I do love Taika Waititi. I think that this story is really great. I think that all of the actors are super fun to watch, and are also charismatic and good looking and attractive and funny. And every level of this movie worked for me. The love story stuff really worked for me, and the villain stuff worked, and the larger like world building of the Marvel universe worked, and you know, the jokes and everything. I think that Taika Waititi's humor works for me better than James Gunn's humor, mostly than like, I think in rewatching all the MCU movies, which I did over the pandemic, I did it with Keller, we watched all the movies, we were surprised. It's like, oh, the Ant-Man movies are really funny and holding up really well. And like the first Guardians doesn't hold up as well. And some of the other, like, you know, humor in the franchise doesn't hold up. The Spider-Man movies humor holds up really well, and the two Ant-Mans I thought were funnier than I remembered them being. And of course, Ragnarok and now Love and Thunder I put in that same category as movies in the MCU that I really, really love. That's my non-spoiler thoughts.
I think
We're
if you
popcorn it, who's it going to?
I think if you really like Thor Ragnarok, I don't think there's a reason for you to not like this movie. Taika Waititi's humor, it's not just Taika Waititi, it's also James Gunn, and it's also anybody who tries to like inject humor into these movies. Sometimes it really works for me, and sometimes it doesn't work as well. I think I even came out of Thor Ragnarok when I saw it for the first time, and I was like, I'm a little uneven, because we had just come from two versions of Thor where they tried to make him very serious, and in the Avengers movies he tried to be more serious. But I think with Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Infinity War, and Endgame, we got a Thor that like wasn't afraid to lighten up and live a little bit, and it kind of leans more into Chris Hemsworth's strengths. Jesus Christ.
Right.
Which I thought was amazing, because I think in those first Thor movies, it was very much boxing him in, being like, well, Thor can only be this type of a character. And now he kind of had an opportunity to grow and spring and do other things. So I think that's what I really enjoy about Ragnarok in this movie, is the fact that Hemsworth gets to just kind of like play in a sandbox of kind of unlimited fun. And as we know, Taika Waititi is one of those directors and characters who likes to improv. Like, he'll literally tear out script pages and he'll go, you know what, let's just try this. So, and I think that like that's all over the screen, right? It's loud, it's wild, it's action packed. It is a space adventure, like it's a space opera. And I think for all of those things, it like really, really works incredibly well. There are some things that I think for me emotionally, I would have liked a little bit more emotional depth. And because of some of the subject matter of these movies, you know, I understand that because they're Marvel Studios films, because they're movies that are trying to appeal to a broad audience, there's only so much you can go before depth becomes depression. There's a fine line there between how deep you can go and how much you should really embrace. And I think for the most part, it works. I think just for me, you know, as I'm aging with the Marvel Cinematic Universe and my taste change, I'm looking for more depth. And I think Doctor Strange surprisingly did that for me. And I don't know if that has something to do with Sam Raimi being a more veteran director. He's older, his life experiences are different. He also just is a different type of director. So I think that's why maybe Doctor Strange worked more for me tonally. I think with this, there's like really funny moments. There are some kind of pull your heartstring moments that I liked. The villain, I think the tone of Gorr is probably one of my favorite parts of this movie. I wish there was a little bit more of him in the film. But overall, yeah, I mean, that's just how my tastes work. So overall, it's a really fun film. If you're going into it and you need like 2 hours of escapism and you just want to have a really fun time and you want some depth and you want some heart, but if you want some of those emotional elements to kind of help keep it grounded, it's in there. I think just for me personally, I like having more of that stuff because I'm a sad, depressing person.
Okay, so I came into this movie not fully expecting much. Ragnarok I thought was a great departure from the weird Thor we saw in Thor 1 and 2. And I felt like Thor found his voice in Ragnarok. So I came in, I was like, okay, cool. This is going to be great. This is great. The first half of the movie, most of the jokes did not land for me. And I was like, oh, did Thor jump the shark? And it was kind of what happened to me a little bit in Guardians 2, where I thought the humor was just a little too over the top. And I don't want to fuel flames for people who are going to say, oh, well, it's just funny comedy jokes in the comments. Shut up in the comments. Shut up. This is not for you. This movie, as much as it did for me, so as much as it did for comedy, it also expanded on the character of Thor. It's a very Thor-centric piece, and I think it does an amazing job of explaining Thor and why he's gone through the emotional depth that he's gone through. And I understand why the comedy is super silly. It feels like it's something that he has to go through. There's some comedy moments, and Hector, you heard me. I was busting up at some of those moments, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they were super hilarious. But when I was watching, I was like, does this fit the tone of the Thor that I know? And it didn't. But now it fits the tone of the Thor that I know. You know what I'm saying? Like I had to watch him go through this arc in order to see that the beginning part of the comedy was justified in being something that he has to go through. So now when I watch it overall, the balance of it, I think is fantastic.
I agree. And I liked it more the second time. Because tonight was the second time that I've seen it. And I think that once you know the entire story, it is just as or more enjoyable to go back and watch it from the beginning because you do know what's going to happen at the end. And so I just enjoyed it.
It's a different experience.
Yeah, it's a different experience. But I know what you're saying about the balance, and I found it to be there. So you're saying that for you, Augustine, it came together at the end and it ended up working.
As they started showing their cards, I was like, oh, I understand why Thor was acting this way. And it makes sense that he did that in that scene because of the emotional point that he was at in his life, right? And even with Natalie Portman's character, there was some moments that didn't land for me. But then at the end, I was like, oh, that's why she was acting that way. And that's why these things were happening because of this. And I like where Marvel Studios is going because with this movie, they're showing me that the superhero element is always going to be there. It's like they put the superhero stuff that's just on like autopilot. That's going to go and it's going to be good no matter what. The action scenes were amazing. It was great. Like, it better be something that they can just do. And they're learning how to weave important character moments and arcs into all of this stuff, which we have been seeing with Loki and WandaVision and all of that stuff. And I think that's really at the core of what Thor is and what any superhero is, basically. If they keep going along this route of really getting to the core of these characters in these super fantastic ways of, superheroes and all this craziness that happens, I think that's a really good direction to go in, because that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for the meat and potatoes and humanizing these characters that like are so extraordinary. You need still to connect to those moments of humanity that they have. And Thor did a really, really good job of connecting me to that, the essence of what Thor is as a human, why he loves humans and why he's an Asgardian who protects this realm, even though he doesn't have to. Like, you really understand his connection. And that's why I thought this movie was fantastic. I know Hector's happy to hear that. He thought I was going to come in all negative.
No. I mean, I think, and even everything Adam said made complete sense for the type of viewer that Adam is. And like you were saying, Adam, like your interests and what you tend to gravitate more towards.
Everyone, I'm just letting you know now that everyone's going to be like, oh, Adam didn't like the movie. I'm going to be like,
I know. It's true. Let's get into spoiler talk. So if you haven't seen it yet,
wait, Adam, flag,
you want to go see it,
spoiler.
Pause, and then come back, or thanks for adding to our viewership. But please, more importantly, go see the movie and don't have anything
like
spoiled.
Button, subscribe, and then go watch the movie, and then come back and watch this.
You got it. I love that Taika Waititi came back to do this film with the idea of, if I were to come back, what would piss off some people the most? And his thinking was, oh, well, a lot of like pissy fanboys online are like, they just want Thor to be tough and macho. And he goes, what if I made a movie where Thor, the thing that he wanted most in the world was to kiss a girl? And that's what made him come back to make this movie. And he was like, he said, like, the thing I was thinking visually to kind of help me sum this movie up is just like the cover of a romance novel, which is what Thor was doing when he was kissing that pirate woman. Yeah. That's what that was.
He was literally Fabio in that scene.
Thor as Fabio. That's what he was leaning into. So I love that he did that. I love that he brought back Natalie Portman. I think that the way that he wrote him and Jane in this film, just their montage where Korg was explaining their backstory, that had more romance and chemistry between those two characters than the previous two Thor movies with Jane in it put together. It was wonderful. It was realistic. You're rooting for them. You feel sorry for them. You understand why it ended up not working out. And when they get together in this movie and they kiss, and the way that Jane is around him and the way that he is around her, it's funny, awkward. It feels real. And I think completely earned.
You connect. Like the connection that I was missing in the other movies was made in this movie. Yeah. Because you felt those emotions that he felt towards her, like really deeply loving somebody to the very end. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
I just want to mention too,
shit to like defeat the villain. But he was like, you know what, bro, you do your thing. If you're going to kill us all, I'm going to go hang out with my girl for the last seconds of my life. Thank you very much. And that's exactly what I would do,
I want to say, from the comic book reader fan perspective, is when they announced that Natalie Portman was coming back to play Thor and she held up the hammer at San Diego Comic-Con, I was stoked, and I'm like, I can't believe they're going to do like the Jane Foster Thor. And I was thinking, I wonder if they will do the storyline in the comics or do something different, because we can talk about it openly. She has cancer in the movie. The same from the comic book storyline. And it is an incredible choice for writer Jason Aaron to do that in the comics, because he didn't have to do that. But it's so
anything else
vulnerable and emotional and real and sad and tragic and human, that it's like, once comic book readers, because for a while it was a mystery who the new Thor was, this woman, it was a mystery. And when they finally revealed that it was not only Jane Foster from comics, and I think at the time Natalie Portman had played her in the movie, so it's like, oh, it's this character. But that revelation, it leaves an impression on you as a reader. I still think about that to this day, and I'm very happy that the movie didn't shy away from it, but in fact embraced it. I think it added to the story. I think it was emotional and beautiful. And I think it's going to be surprising because it hasn't been referenced in any marketing material. I think it's going to surprise a lot of audience members. And I will say that I was worried that if they were going to do it, that I was like, I wonder if they will. It's so tricky to navigate, and you don't want to make a depressing movie, but you want to be honest. And at the end of this film, Jane dies, but she goes to Valhalla. And I haven't read some of those Thor comics that wind up her story, that kind of wrap it up, but I think it's similar to how they did it in the comics, because that is what should happen. And her being Thor should not, in a movie, magically cure her of her cancer, because then I think audiences who know and love people who are either dealing with it or have died from it or have survived it.
There's no magic trick.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And so this movie, for it to do that. And I also want to mention this movie is a kid's movie. It is for families. And it is because Taika's a father and Chris Hemsworth is a father, and their kids were in the movie themselves.
Natalie Portman's a mother.
And Gorr's daughter in the film is played by Taika's daughter. That is his daughter in real life. And I think that the ending act where it started, I remember the first time I watched it, it started silly, and I'm like, what's happening here? But when Thor empowers all the children,
that was my favorite part.
But then you guys,
that
incredible.
Augustine, I heard you. You were like, "This is awesome."
Yeah,
and you could feel the audience just rally behind it. It's a wonderful moment, and Taika has said that he made this movie with the idea that like everything a 6-year-old would want in a movie, they said yes to. I just found an interview that him and Hemsworth did where he said that he was writing the script. His daughter was like, "What's a shadow demon?" And he was like, "I don't know. I'm gonna have to come up with something." And she goes, "Can I draw it?" And he's like, "Okay." And she drew something. He took it to the visual development team. They turned it into, and then all of a sudden, Chris Hemsworth's kids were doing that. Christian Bale's kids did that. The kids in the production of the film, producers' kids, were designing demons that then the visual development team and the CG artists turned into the actual shadow demons of the movie.
That's why those kids all have special credits, special thanks credits at the end, don't they?
Yes, I think so. I think so. But to me, that coupled with Taika being like, I wanted to make pissy fanboys mad that like Thor wants love, and it being a family movie, and Thor ends the movie as a dad. All of these things, if there are any honestly comic book fans that are mad at any of this, fuck you guys.
I agree.
Because it's
Thor
awesome.
Thor's the ultimate anti-alpha bro, whatever you want to call it. Like bros, Joe Rogan watcher, bro guy. Like this Thor would not watch Joe Rogan. This Thor would be watching some
90
Dumb
Day
and Dumber,
Fiancé.
or he'd be watching 90 Day Fiancé or something, right? He'd still be playing video games. This Thor is very much getting used to being in touch with his feelings. And I love that about him because he needs that.
Vulnerability is a strong attribute.
Right. The entire time I was watching Gorr, I was like, bro, just go to therapy. You didn't need to kill all the gods. Like, you didn't need the sword. I feel you. Your daughter died. It's tragic. Let's go talk about it in a group therapy session or something, like I will help you, Gorr. I will help you. But not everybody goes through that, but I do like how they handled Gorr as well. He had some truly terrifying cinematic scenes in there when he would come out of the shadows. I couldn't tell if it was his face or a skeleton face because it was kind of dark, and he would come in with the glowing beady eyes, deep sockets, and kind of like couldn't really tell what was going on here. And it was actually terrifying when he grabbed the kids at night. Oh my God. My kid self, you're right, Hector. This movie was made for my 10-year-old self growing up and reading comics. It was truly terrifying.
That's what you said at the end. That's what you said when the kids had those powers with their weapons, is it you turned to me and you go, my inner 10-year-old is just like losing his
screaming
because it's so cool.
Screaming his little heart out. Right?
It's such a great little moment. Cool. He's like, if they should be worthy, they'll possess only temporarily the power of Thor. I'm like, this is perfect. This is so good.
And I love that they let the little kids fight with what they knew. The little girl with her little bunny
stuffed animal laser eyes.
She was screaming die with laser eyes.
So
that's
good.
Exactly, because that's her comfort bunny, right? And just like Thor with Mjolnir, that's his comfort right there. The kids were doing the exact same thing. Looking back at this movie, you're right, Hector. It's such a good fuck you to fanboys who are just need Thor to be that ultimate alpha bro dude. And people who think that comic book movies are not for kids, like they're watching it as an adult saying, oh, there's kids in it, I don't like it. Blah. And it's
we're literally experiencing that with a Disney Plus series right now.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly what's happening with Miss Marvel, because they're just like, oh, it doesn't look like me. Blah, I'm not gonna watch it. Get out of here. Don't even. I'm gonna block you in the comments. Get out of here. You're not allowed here. Yeah, this movie is not for people who are willing to accept emotional depth and challenging what you believe yourself to do or be or anything. Because that's what this movie is really about. It's exploring Thor and what he really loves. Because what's his name? Star-Lord says it at the beginning. He's like, you're a billion years old and you don't know yourself. They said it directly in the movie. And in this movie, he starts to know himself. He starts to know what he stands for. He starts to know what he loves and what he's going to do about it. It's his purpose. It's his drive. He's not the macho bro. He's going to be himself. You know, and I think that's absolutely incredible.
Well, and again, I think that goes back to the first couple of Thor movies, and it's not that they were trying to do that. I think just the tone kind of you kind of make those assumptions just based on the tone of those movies. And I think what Ragnarok and this movie have done is that they've again allowed Hemsworth to kind of embrace a different side of himself and let that bleed over into the character, which makes him feel more three-dimensional. Because even as broy and alpha as some people think that they are, when they let their guard down, they can be just as silly as Thor, but they are just less willing to embrace that.
They just want to kiss a girl.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's all they want. That's really all they want, and that's kind of really all that Thor wants. He wants to find his purpose, and he really does want to find love.
Also, adding the jealousy of Stormbreaker and Mjolnir was brilliant. So good. So good. When Stormbreaker would just come around the corner. Or just be
hey man,
oh hey, I was just thinking about you.
But let's talk about a little bit about like the emotional depth stuff. So we were talking about Jane Foster's story.
Yeah,
and I think for me, you know, again, because it is a film that is geared for all audiences, it's a really fine line to tiptoe between being deep and depressing. And I think you already have a character called Gorr the God Butcher who is kind of filling that role. He's literally trying to get revenge, avenge the death of his daughter because of the gods. So you have to really be careful with like, well, if I make Jane Foster a similar tone to the villain of the movie, are people going to assume, are they going to associate those two characters together? How do you uniquely create, I guess, like a through line for that character where it feels like it's really going to work? And I think part of what works is that instead of exploring the time that Jane doesn't have left, they really lean into the time that she does have left. And what does she do? What does she do with that time? And even at the end of that movie where Thor tells her, like, if you pick up that damn hammer one more time, that might be the end for you. But for her, it's about, it's more than just about her. It's about the greater cause. It's about the greater universe. It's about saving the kids. Like that really is the ultimate mission of that movie and bringing them back to Asgard, to New Asgard. But it's also, I think, Jane saying like, I don't want to die in this bed, having wondered what could I have done if I would have just picked up the hammer and gone off to help you. So I loved moments like that. I think because we haven't seen Jane Foster in so long, I would have loved maybe, I didn't even need too much more, maybe like one scene or two scenes of just a little bit more of like, what is Jane really going through? Because I think we get a little bit of it, and especially towards the end. But in the beginning, I'm like, you feel like you're really unbothered by this. And I know that that is like a common thing that people who have cancer do, is they brush it off and like, oh, it's fine. It's no big deal. But there comes a point, whether people like it or not, like we know this, we all have had people, family and friend groups who have had this disease. There is a turning point where you finally decide like, all right, I have to like accept, you know, like this is going to be part of my life. And it does kind of shift your tone as a person. There are also, you're still kind of pulling at the strings of, but I still want to make use of all the time that I've left, and I want to do as much as I possibly can. So I think I would have liked maybe like one thing more of like, how else is Jane feeling other than she's missed Thor?
Hear me out. What if they would have added a scene? And I think you're right, Adam, 100% that we needed more of Jane, but Jane enjoying being Thor, like her getting the powers and really enjoying them for herself and saying, oh my God, I love this feeling. I love this power.
Yeah, because it goes by really fast.
It went from Jane to Thor And then you're like, okay, she's Thor now.
Yeah.
All
and
right.
I think, and I think for me, surprisingly, the second half of that movie is surprisingly for me, usually the first half sometimes is stronger, but I think the second half works better for me because the beginning is just like, we're going to Asgard, we're going to Thor, we're going to Jane, we're going to this, we're going to that. And I'm like, can we slow down maybe just a little bit?
The beginning with the comedy, the over the top comedy. Like, I love the splits. I love the splits.
Bro, so funny.
I laughed the entire time, right? Hilarious. But it just kept going and going and going. Like, I couldn't really stop to enjoy the comedy. Yeah. And that's why I felt like at the very beginning, even the first act was just a little too rushed.
Yes.
They turn to you at the very beginning and be like, is this going a little too quick? Like, what's going on here? Because it felt that way.
That's absolutely how I felt. It
really slowed down, and then it's really started to just kind of live in those moments.
Yeah.
For the first time, I have an action figure that's not even able to do the stunt in the movie. This is the first time I have an action figure that cannot do the action. I can't even straighten it more than this. So it's not
perfect.
It was too perfect.
It was Van Damme.
He was 180 degrees. It was just like this.
Anyway,
but yeah, it was a bit much at the beginning. But like I said, I understand why they were doing this because they were going to hit us with some very heavy things, cancer diagnosis. How do you deal with that as a person? How do the rest of the characters deal with that? And also kidnapping children in cages. That's been a hot topic for a while.
Yeah.
They were going to hit us with a lot of stuff. And I now, like I said in the very beginning, I understand why they were hitting us with all that silliness because we kind of had to be brought into this world of like, okay, guys, just kind of break your expectations of what you think this is going to be a little bit different. So
I think Adam's point is probably what the movie tries to answer by giving us the flashback with Jane's own mom, Elaine Foster. But that it does go by so quick, and it's fine. I mean, it's fine that it goes by that quickly, but it's different than like the opening scene for Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a scene that flashback in 1988 when Peter Quill was a little boy. That really lets you sit in that emotion, and then it tells you what that boy and how kind of stunted he is emotionally for the rest of his life. And this one felt a little quick. And basically what I'm hearing is like, we would have liked more Jane, because as soon as she does go to New Asgard and she's near the hammer shards, it does cut back to Thor. And then it's from that point on, it's Thor's perspective. It's Thor Odinson's perspective. And that's the first time we see Mighty Thor, Jane Foster Thor, is through Thor's eyes. And that's really fun. But we did miss the moment of her first turning into Thor, which could have been really, really cool. So
it could have been really I would have cut Guardians from the beginning and just let Thor do his thing, and I would have added more Natalie in the very beginning.
That's all. That was also my thoughts about the movie. Was like, I appreciate the Guardians being in there because I feel like it just is a continuation of what Endgame does. It didn't add anything to the story other than the conversation he has with Peter Quill, but I kind of feel like he could have had that conversation with almost any other character. Like he could have had it with Valkyrie.
Korg could have hit him with that stuff because Korg is wise beyond what he beyond what he lets off. He is a wise character. Yeah. And Korg could have hit him with those lines. So I feel like a little bit of a trade-off, could have happened, but it's not a make or break thing for the movie at all.
No. And like nothing in this movie for me is make or break. I think overall as a movie, it really works. It works really well. And it is funny. I had this issue with Ragnarok too when I first saw it. Was like at certain points, I'm like, okay, I get it. It's funny. Let's move on. And this has moments like that too. But I think like some people are going to eat that shit up, and that's totally okay. It's just different strokes for different folks.
I agree with you, Adam. There are moments where it's just like, I get it. We're trying to be funny. Let's move on. But at the same time, I have to remind myself to kind of live in those moments as well. It's just like, okay, they're just being silly to be silly. And I hear what you're putting out there and I'm catching it and I'm just going to vibe with it at this point because like, we review stuff. If it's not your bag, it's not your bag, but there's also no reason to hate it because those moments were not lynchings in the movie that like destroyed everything.
Yeah. Guys, I thought the goats were fucking hilarious.
The goats were great. The goats were at first. And they introduced them in a very chaotic moment in the movie. And that just felt like too much. But when they started screaming as they did things throughout the movie, it was awesome.
I will say like that scene where they introduce the goats and they're on the Guardian's ship and it's just like all hell's breaking loose. I could barely make out what characters were saying, there's a part of me that's like, I found it hilarious. And I also feel like that was incredibly purposeful. It worked so well for me. So by that point, I was like, I'm already so over these goats. And then you go for a little bit of time where there's nothing. And then it's like, all right, let's get our ship. And then all of a sudden, and I'm like, all right, I'm back on board with these crazy things. And then they crash into the planet or the rock.
And there's a beat. Oh, that was great. But when they land in like omnipotent city and there's a beat, and then from that faraway shot, like after they've landed.
It's
classic
great.
comedy.
I think they have some really
Yeah.
What were you going to mention, Augustine, about your heart that I rudely interrupted with talking about goats?
My heart melted, and we could save this towards the end, but I think it's a brilliant thing that they did was telling us why the movie was called Love and Thunder. My heart melted when Thor became a dad. And I almost went like, oh, fuck, like out loud.
Yeah.
For real.
At the title reveal. Love and Thunder.
I'm wonderful. Like, oh my God, I can't believe because I, first of all, didn't see it coming from a mile away. I could not have seen it coming. But then like seeing them come out, she's holding Stormbreaker and they're about to, go on this epic quest. And there's this little girl with her dad. It's just like Love and Thunder. That's beautiful. Usually they drop the film names somewhere in the middle of the movie, right?
Yeah, and they never do.
Yeah.
Whatever. This one, they drop it at the end, and it's fantastic.
As soon as Korg said, "Oh, are they going to make babies? Oh, I think he'd be a great dad," and I was like, "All right, he's walking out with a kid out of this movie." I knew it. The second he said that, said that, I was like, "Oh, he's gonna have a kid at the end of this movie." But that part was amazing, and then I actually love that she calls him Uncle Thor. I thought that was very sweet.
Yeah, very sweet. The Korg dying moment got our audience. Everyone was like, no, like everyone was so pissed and so sad.
I'm here, help me.
And then
I'm in the rocks.
It turns out I'm not dead. and at the end, when Korg got with some guy named Dwayne, so sweet, because what a great payoff, right? What a great payoff that he was like, that's what my dad would sing to my other dead. Like, that like just a wonderful payoff that like all the Cronins potentially are just dudes and they're all gay, or at least Korg. That's what he relayed, that experience that he had.
Male society, basically. That's all.
That's all you can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then Valkyrie, I thought also Tessa Thompson. I forget that Tessa Thompson is not British. She is so good.
Yeah, she's
seriously.
Good.
She was
really
listening
good,
to this accent. I'm like, she is so good. But I loved Valkyrie in this movie. Val and Jane have a great friendship. Val is a great king. Yeah. But and then just kind of summing up Val's story of like why she also keeps people away and why she is the way she is, when Korg was like, you just look for comfort in the bottom of a drink and bottom of a bottle and hope that it
you Asgard is chaotic.
Yeah, but that made me hope to see more of Valkyrie and more of her story too. Like I'd love for her to find happiness, maybe with a partner, if she gets that one woman's hand. That would be fantastic. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to mention, but I do want to talk about Zeus and Hercules, because I feel
before we talk about those two, I do want to say that I generally agree with what everyone was saying had already seen the movie before us, that Gorr the God Butcher was a really good villain. And
great choice.
I'm not super familiar. I mean, I know of the comic books, but I haven't read all of them, so I don't know Gorr the God Butcher like that well, like in depth. But when you're gonna get Christian Bale, you're gonna get someone who's really, really gonna give you a performance, and I think it works really well, balancing out all of the lighter tone, the humor, and all that stuff. I think like he helps kind of anchor the movie in some ways. And it brings like the when they go into that black and white sequence where they're fighting him on that rock, like
it was such a great.
When there's horror moments and he's coming in and out of the darkness, or they're being sucked by all those like tentacle monsters, those creatures, and he's just being ruthless and he's up in everybody's face and he's just drooling, and I'm like,
Christian Bale is such a good actor that he can sell these emotions that we're supposed to feel with one line. With such a small amount of screen time, he can make you understand he lost his daughter. And at the end of the movie, he moved me to tears when he is in Infinity, when he is
Right.
there in this space where he realizes that he can wish for his daughter to come back, but then he's like, but she'll be alone. And then Jane is like, she won't be alone. And all these realizations, and he's saying these things with one moment, one line, one breath. And then he talks to the actor who is playing his daughter. He sells all that stuff, man. He made me cry when he said, "I'm so sorry." And she was like, "It's okay." Yeah. Like just that stuff is beautiful. And that's what you get when you get Christian. Plus, he was really funny, and he was really like, "Oh, did your gods let you down? Oh,
when he was talking to the kids,
oof, that was great. Oh, a second ago, you loved heads ripping off.
I love that they added the head bouncing into the audience.
Into the hall. Yeah, all the kids. That's terrifying.
It didn't just like bat it away. It like bounced behind the kids. I thought that was great. But to your point, Hector, you're right. In moments in which another actor would have needed more exposition to deliver an emotion, Christian Bale could do it with a look. He could do it with a line. He could do it with just a short sentence. He really delivered as Gorr the God Butcher, and I don't even mind that they changed the design, because in the comics he looks very different than what he is now. I like everything they did with this. His overall silhouette. He's a very unique looking character with the glowing eyes. I think was the perfect touch to have that happen. The big final scene where everything was black and white on a little tiny planet. I thought that was brilliant to have a battle on something that we've never really seen before. I don't like, and this is not a diss on Marvel or anything, but I don't like that villains are always dying. I feel like there could be so much more that we could see with Gorr.
Yes.
But at the same time, Gorr could potentially lead to Null because the sword has ties to Null. I don't know if you know Null, Adam.
I know
but
of Null,
in the comics, he is right now the greatest threat that the whole MCU has at this point. And that sword has ties to Null's sword, which is kind of the source of his powers as well. So, well, not really the source, but like an embodiment of his powers. So maybe
and listen, the sword,
like maybe there's arc,
the sword,
I don't know.
The sword disintegrated when Jane sacrificed Mjolnir to destroy it, but Mjolnir was also destroyed. They brought back Mjolnir. There could be a way to incorporate, now that the Necro sword has been destroyed, it has led to this prophecy of and you could bring in Null, and you could. There's a lot of potential there, and I know what you're saying about these great actors, Michael B. Jordan, Kate Blanchett.
Yeah, they always die, and I'm like, no, please.
One movie, but. It's about enjoying how great they are in that one movie, but also remembering, hey man, they left Michael Keaton in play. Yeah. They've got, they had Josh Brolin for multiple movies. He's no longer in play. Hell, even Ethan Hawke in Moon Knight, like we didn't see him get shot. I'm just saying, there's
some people left.
The only reason I bring this up is because I don't want my boy Dr. Doom to be a one and done villain.
You can't.
Augustine, my friend,
the guy.
Rest assured. I'm going to tell you this right now. Here's a spoiler for the future of the MCU, everybody, in case you're not aware. Here's a spoiler for you. Here's villains who are going to appear once, and they're going to stick around like Loki, Magneto, Doctor Doom. Don't even trip.
Literally what I was thinking,
They know what those characters are. They know the potentiality of those characters. Don't even trip. It's the one-offs like Hela, Gorr the God Butcher, Killmonger. Those are the ones that they can do that with. They kept around Vulture, Michael Keaton, they, not just because Spider-Man is not going to kill that villain. And then they even made it seem like Mysterio died, but I bet you they could bring back Jake Gyllenhaal so that he didn't die as well. They know which villains to keep around. They knew that Loki was the long game. They knew that the Winter Soldier was the long game, and they were right. Because all you have to do is look at the comics and know the potential of those characters. Yeah. You can read all the Gorr the God Butcher comics, and I feel like walk away and go, yeah, that's one movie. You could do that for one movie. And and I think they've so far been playing that correctly. So don't worry, my friend. Victor Von Doom is going to be a multi-film bad.
Mark this part in the video. Comic-Con is coming up. We'll see if Hector was right after Comic-Con or for, who knows, the next 10 years of the MCU. Yeah. Who knows what they're going to do? I don't know.
Hercules. Russell Crowe, hilarious. The Greek accent he had was so funny.
I did not expect that whatsoever.
Have a little wine. Have a good time. It's okay. We're safe.
I I'm glad that you got Greek out of it, because the whole time I was sitting there, I was like, why does he sound so Italian?
Yeah, it's a little Italian, a little Greek.
Italian, it's all dressing,
okay.
it's all dressing. You know what I'm saying? It's all dressing, baby. It's fine. It's fine.
Man. Yeah, when he does the 3-point turn and pose, I was like, okay.
And lifting his little skirt thing.
I was just happy that like when he did get killed, I was like, good. That's what should have happened for the story. But then at the end, when you could kill Zeus, I was like, good. I'm glad that he's still around, because I want them to bring back Russell Crowe for at least one more. And you guys, spoiler alert, have not seen the show Ted Lasso, have you?
Right.
Sorry, audience.
No, we have.
Are we going to add this to our Patreon list?
Adam, you heard that genuine scream behind us when that character showed up. Somebody legitimately screamed.
No, it wasn't somebody. It was like 15 people screamed at the top of their lungs. Yeah. And I was sitting there and I was going, okay, I know it's Hercules. Who the f*** is this actor? I have no clue.
Yeah. You guys are going to love this actor, and let me tell you why. Because he's a comedic actor. And he was cast on Ted Lasso. And he does this voice, and he's playing an asshole in this show. But over the course of 2 seasons, and I think they're going into a third, or maybe they already have 3 seasons out, I forget however many Ted has, he becomes your favorite character. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's because of how good the actor was. He's a standout in a stellar ensemble in that show. Like, everybody's good on that show. The actor is Brett Goldstein. So this guy is a true blue movie nerd and a wonderful actor. And just like, I am so happy for him to get this role. Because when you watch Ted Lasso and he plays this asshole, but you know that the actor's really funny, and the way that he's doing it, and he still is incredibly charismatic, and you root for him, it's going to be perfect for Hercules. Now, Hercules may have a little bit of a different flavor than the comics, but I also think that them getting that actor is like they're going to play the long game, because Hercules is the last major Avengers character that hasn't appeared in the MCU yet. Maybe outside of Wonder Man. Or, you know, like there's so few characters left. We've had all the major Avengers. We've had the founding members. We've had Vision. We've had Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Black Widow, Hawkeye, all these major, Black Panther, all these major Avengers characters. And then here comes Hercules. And Hercules in the comics is the himbo, fun-loving party guy that Thor is in the MCU. And for them to pit Hercules against Thor in the MCU and have him go,
they're going to be the best brothers.
And yes, they're going to bash, bro. They're going to clash. They're going to bash like they do in the comics. But I think it's the perfect type of actor to then team up and let's fight somebody else. And he's going to be an Avenger. It's so good. But this is another thing you need to mark and revisit once you've seen Ted Lasso. And then you're like, he's here, he's there, he's every fucking where. Roy Kent. He plays a character named Roy Kent in the show. Okay. And that's what people were excited about. And that goes to show you that, like, it's a smart choice. That an audience who, some of which have seen this Apple TV Plus show, can be like, oh yeah, they got him.
I feel like generally people are going to be super excited, because I feel like generally people have watched Ted Lasso, and we're the only two idiots who have not.
I've only heard super positive things about that show.
Same. So I only never watched it because I didn't have an Apple Plus subscription, but then I got one recently, so I'm like, now I can watch it.
I've never watched it because I'm watching too much 90 Day Fiance, so I'm gonna have to curb 90 Day to the side for a little bit, curb that a little bit.
Let's see how your wife feels about that, and we'll see. Yeah, and then we'll get back to that.
Ted Lasso is as good as everybody's saying, I think she'll be okay with that. One more thing I want to talk to you guys about is, how do you feel about the second post-credit scene where they show us Valhalla? Because Valhalla is always a thing that's like ethereal. It seems like the final thing. Yeah. How do you feel about that being a realm that can potentially be broken into?
I think when the day comes and Thor makes the sacrifice in battle and dies, and he goes to Valhalla, and that's the last scene of the movie. He reunites with Heimdall. He reunites with his parents. Maybe Loki, I don't know. And then he reunites with Jane. It's probably going to be one of the most emotional moments of the MCU, because he is one of those characters who has literally lost everything.
Everybody.
Yes. Counterpoint. Counterpoint to everything Adam just said, which was so great and emotional and probably the best path that they should take. Counterpoint. What if Thor Odinson as the new Odin, as the inheritor of the Odin power, because Odin passed away. And so he's sort of, even though Valkyrie is the king of Asgard,
Right.
that Odin's son being Thor, he can tap into the Odin force or the Odin power.
Mhm.
The comic books, Thor himself was the person who, after Ragnarok happened, used his power to resurrect Asgardians. And
Mhm.
he brought back Heimdall and the Warriors 3, and the Lady Sif had even died in Ragnarok, and Loki had died. And when he brought Loki back, he came back as a woman. That was the first time that he had kind of majorly shifted his appearance, and he did it to try to trick everybody into being like, I'm innocent now. I'm not the person that you thought. But Loki has also sacrificed himself and then been resurrected as Teen Loki. So we've already gotten Teen Loki in the Loki show. But what if Thor decided to tap into that, and he could, with his abilities, resurrect all of the Asgardians who have died in battle? I mean, there was a line in this movie where they were like, we have to, use our forces and go get our kids back. And somebody said, well, half of our forces are dead. And another Asgardian said, half of our forces are always dead. And you think about that and you go, yeah, they continue to lose just chunks of Asgardian people in every one of these movies, whether they're fighting Hela or Malekith, the Dark Elf, or whatever, that Thor could just decide, you know what, everybody's back. Idris Elba, Heimdall is back. The Warriors 3 are back. Not Odin, because I feel like that the lineage is like everybody below Odin can come back. And so either Thor can resurrect even Frigga, his mother, if he wanted to, or he can't. But whatever the case may be, could he bring back Jane? And if he did, because Jane Foster is currently active in the comic books as well, and she's back as a Valkyrie herself. She's no longer Thor. She doesn't have that Thor power. So it's like, is that something that the MCU would want to do? And would that take away from what they did in this film and her story arc and her stage 4 cancer? And is that a solve that audiences
tricky
would be
territory?
Like,
I feel like it's been really smart the way that they have kind of avoided that comic book trope of nobody ever really dies in the comics, right? And it's tricky in live action because Chris Hemsworth is not always going to have the godlike chiseled body that he has now, right? There's going to be a moment in which he either does not want to do these movies anymore, or, he's unable to do these movies anymore. Whatever the case may be, there is going to be a point in which
reality
Chris Hemsworth will not be Thor. I feel like it would be in their best interest to have Thor, because Chris Hemsworth's Thor, to have that Tony Stark moment where we're all emotionally shattered because there is no coming back for this character, right? And he deserves to be in Valhalla. If there's any character who deserves to be there, it's got to be this guy. So having that realm now have a look and a face and a portal, apparently, that you can go to it as.
Yeah, I think that's only accessible if you die, though. I don't think that's something you can just walk into.
But that's the thing. Like, we're in kind of like the multi-dimensional multiverse kind of. Is death just another realm that you can get to through some mystical, magical way, right? So I don't know. I do like that Natalie Portman and that Mighty Thor got to go to Valhalla, because she deserved that honor and that reverence. I just don't know, and this is just we're just gonna have to wait and see how they're going to treat Valhalla at this point, because it feels a little odd to me, but I also kind of trust that they know or are potentially setting up a Tony Stark moment for Thor. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is going to be that moment someday.
I actually like that a lot. And also, Thor has a daughter, and there are other Asgardians, and Valkyrie is active, and Heimdall has a kid who's going to grow up and be like a cool new Heimdall, and so they can always tell stories in the Asgardian world. I want to mention this too, because I know that Taika's brought it up in press interviews, that like these comics where Gorr the God Butcher came from are really cool, because the God Butcher character is so long lived that he was active when Thor was like 17 years old, or maybe a young god only a few hundred years old, and he was like this teenager. Then Gorr is active in the present day, and Gorr is still around in the far future of thousands of years from now, when Thor becomes basically the new Odin. He's like a 70-year-old looking guy with an eye patch, and one of his arms is missing, and he has like a prosthetic limb that's made up of the Destroyer armor's arm. And this Gorr the God Butcher storyline actually ends up intersecting with these 3 time periods, And the Thors themselves, Old Man Thor, present day Avenger Thor, and young Thor, Brash Thor, all have to team up through this like time travel shenanigans thing and kind of deal with Gorr the God Butcher. Now, can you imagine Chris Hemsworth playing different versions of himself?
That'd be crazy.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
to have, and the MCU can do something really daring and go, you know what, we're going to do with the next Thor movie, but it's going to be thousands of years in the future of the MCU. We're not going to tell you everything that happened, but you'll have some clues. But maybe Thor's daughter is now an adult, and maybe she is still around, but she's like a grown woman now, but a god. And this old man Thor is going to interact with present day Hemsworth, who's still going to look like a god, and they're going to have Hemsworth like the teenager version of Thor. And then at the end of that story, Thor, the old man Thor, could go to Valhalla, and what will they have? They'll have Idris Elba there, Natalie Portman there, the Warriors 3, all the other Asgardians, and then Tom Hiddleston, Loki will be there. And that is going to make you cry harder than when Tony Stark. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, that's all I'm asking for. I'm just asking to be wrecked emotionally.
I'm into this idea and I'm into this concept as long as we get Luke Hemsworth to play old Thor and Liam Hemsworth to play young Thor.
Oh yeah, that would be incredible.
Have them in the movie for sure, but I would really love to see Chris Hemsworth
play all three.
Old man makeup. Like imagine a movie where Chris Evans as the old Steve Rogers like teamed up with normal Chris Evans and like and Skinny Steve or something like that's what it would look like.
Is there anything else about the movie you guys want to talk about?
That was it. I feel like I got all my emotions out in this one. This movie was good. It was really, really good, and I'm glad it exists. And I just can't wait to watch it in 3D again, baby, because that's gonna look amazing. Yeah,
that's how I feel. It's a really visually compelling movie, and there's a lot of elements in there that I think could make for a really fun IMAX 3D experience.
The first time when they're in New Asgard and Gorr attacks and Mjolnir shows up and Thor goes out to reach for it and it comes to a monster and does that little slow-mo move, I'm like, I wish we were watching this in 3D.
The shattered Mjolnir flying through the air and coming back. I think that's going to look pretty rad.
Awesome.
I think I'm really excited to see it next in 3D. So let's go again, boys.
Same. I'm down. Let's do it. But guys, of course, let us know what you thought about Thor: Love and Thunder. If you well, look at him just sneaking on in.
Just sneaking on in like Stormbreaker.
That's right. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Some of the things that you liked, maybe didn't like. Try to keep it semi-spoiler free just for people who maybe haven't seen the movie yet. If you're going down in the comments, just be forewarned that you might come across some spoilies. Check out our other videos. Check out our other reactions, Miss Marvel, all kinds of stuff on the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we will see you in the next review. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.